Here we go.
Hey guys, welcome back to Geeks Talking Geek. Unfortunately, it looks like I'm the only geek around right now. Hopefully some more geeks will show up. Anyways, I'm Bandito Bane, the well-rounded nerd, the Super Spider-Man fan, and the Warhammer noob. And we're doing this just in time for my birthday. I'm celebrating another rotation around the sun. Always exciting. Okay, we're going to be talking about topics that have been hitting the geek news, such as the layoffs in Disney, how's that's going to affect Marvel comic books, the whole scalping situation with low print comics, which are being bought up by resellers and then giving an exorbitant amount of prices online on eBay and other things. We're also going to be talking about the Paramount possibly canceling or not renewing Alex Kurtzman's Star Trek contract. And also we're going to be talking about D&D actually apologizing to Alex Kurtzman. Apologizing to Luke Gygax, the son of Gary Gygax, after they disrespected him 2 years ago in the 50th anniversary of D&D. So right now, let's look at one of the things I want to look at is going over the history of what Wizards of the Coast did during D&D. So a couple of years ago, Wizards of the Coast actually celebrated D&D. They re-released the box set. They re-released the red box set, the iconic art. They had figures of the original party, which was in D&D, and this was they actually released a book which actually showed off Gary Gygax's work and some of the other co-founders. Now, but one of the things is that they basically dragged Gary Gygax's name through the mud with this one. I'm going to share an article. And this one was from the Medium, and it says that this one that they're trying to make Dungeons and Dragons anti Gary Gygax, and this was from the beginning and from the forward of the books. It says this book includes something never before published. The original draft of Dungeons & Dragons that Gary Gygax crafted on his home typewriter, with his and Aronson's annotations, corrections. This draft led to the 1974 publication of the first edition of D&D, which is reprinted here in its entirety. Finally, there's more important supplements to the first edition of this game. Gygax, Blackmore, and Edrich wizardry appears here, as do numerous articles, expansions written by by fans, and many of which were incorporated into Advanced Dungeons and Dragons in the year after 1977. With few expectations, every page is reproduced in this book and is from the first printing, with no attempt to correct the original pages, street addresses, and phones and numbers that redirected early rules or more important. All right, so let me get to the part where all right, so this is where it comes into them. Some language of the first iteration of Dungeons and Dragons D&D presents a moral quandary. The documents reproduce the book includes many pages of the charts and tables alongside lists and monster spells and magic items, but that game also contains a virtual catalog of insensitive and derogatory language, words that are casually hurtful to anyone with physical and mental disabilities who happen to appear old, fat, and non-conventionally attractive, indigenous, black, or a woman. Some people have charitably ascribed this language as the author working from bad assumptions. In the 1970s, historical warmonger, the American primarily white working class isn't surprising that they would dub a class of soldier of the fighting men. But when the pages of Greyhawk are the descriptions of the Queen's chaotic dragons include a dig at woman libs in misogyny and conscious choice. Unfortunately, the fact of women seldom appear in the original Dungeons and Dragons, and when they do, they are usually portrayed disrespectfully. Slavery appears in the original D&D not as a human tragedy that devastated generations and centuries, but simply as a commercial transaction. The culture aberrations of the original Dungeon D&D ranges from bewildering to like naming every 6 level cleric as a llama, to staggering gods of and demigods and heroes not reprinted in this book, including the game statistics for sacred figures revived more than a billion people around the world. Players are expected to fight Vishnu and principal deities of Hinduism, kill him, loot his +3 sword of demon slaying. Despite these shortcomings, D&D has always been a game about people choosing and someone unlike collaborating. So this has always been a problem with virtue signaling. Oh, see, we have a geek now. Hey, John, how's it going?
How you doing? How's it going?
I'm doing okay. So
talking about modern D&D.
Yeah, this has been brought up because the WotC, the new WotC head, has publicly apologized to Luke Gygax, the son of Gary Gygax, because the Greyhawk is now partnering with WotC and D&D.
Yeah, and they changed the name of the inn from the Welcome Wench to the Pleasant Paladin or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. But now I don't know if you remember the drama about this 2 years ago, where the 50th anniversary, they actually dragged Gary Gygax and the founder's name through the mud.
Yep. They did it to everybody. Do you remember there was an attack against Stan Lee, that he was a sex pest and stuff like that?
Yeah, and that stuff was proven not false.
Right. If the guy was 99 years old in a wheelchair, and now he's a sexual abuser, you know.
Yeah.
The guy's imagining his nurse is his wife, you know what I mean? Because he's dementia.
Yeah.
and trying to kiss his wife, and now they're saying he's a freaking abuser. These people never bow to the mob because they're never satisfied.
Yeah, and this is basically because they're bringing in Luke Gygax to help bring Greyhawk back into modern D&D, because the Gygax family actually owned Greyhawk,
Right.
and unfortunately Gary Gygax Jr. passed away last year. And so they actually the head actually apologized. The head of WotC actually apologized to Luke Gygax and his daughter at GaryCon last month.
Yeah, means they really need money.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things that I remember from during the pandemic days. People were trying D&D because it was actually because of Stranger Things, but now so they tried to modernize it, but now they're getting everything. But now they're getting everything.
Well,
but now they're losing that audience.
Right. The D&D has always been and always will be based on, it was Tolkien. It was copying Lord of the Rings. It was copying Tolkien. The elves, they couldn't say hobbits, they said halflings. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was, Tolkien was if Tolkien had a bunch of friends, he probably would have put them through his characters and stuff. Like, there would, believe it or not, role-playing games go all the way back. I think H.G. Wells, he played he put out one of the first rule books for miniatures warplaying, proto role-playing games.
Yeah.
Peter Cushing was into it. And there was I forget who else, but there was a whole bunch. It was, and it's funny because when you see them play it, they all dress up in ties. Everything was like a gentleman's game. Yeah. But anyway, it was always a male-dominated, European-based fantasy world, and there's nothing wrong with that. Now D&D made overtures. They did the Oriental Adventures. They did the African Adventures. And then 10 years later, everybody said the Oriental Adventures was racist. So you can't. So then they pulled back and stayed European. I have modules set in like a fantasy, Mesoamerican. I don't know exactly if it was. I don't know enough about Aztecs and Mayans and Incas to make the distinction. And it was probably a blend.
Yeah.
That a real hardcore person would probably get like, oh, come on, guys, you can't tell the difference. But bunch of New Yorkers, bunch of Californians, we don't know the difference. But it's not supposed to be real. And here's the thing about D&D that drives me nuts. Gary Gygax himself said, make it all up. Every rule is a suggestion. Every module is a suggestion. Every game should be homebrewed. And, that's what I did. That's what everybody I knew, I mined everything. I took this from that book. I took this from that book. I took this from that book and made it myself. And,
all right.
And then Stranger Things came out and made it for theater kids. And, they had therapy sessions about it. And now they have D&Ds with no deaths. And they try to go through and get everything offensive out. And you know what? We like everything about D&D except everything about D&D. So we're going to change it all. And is it selling? I don't know.
No, it's not selling. They thought that they would go to virtual tabletops. It did not go well.
So how often do you play?
I played for almost an entire year, but then my campaign actually went bust because my dungeon master decided wasn't having fun anymore, so I went back to a World of Warhammer. But right now,
I played. I play in person only. I won't play online. So I got a big old table there. We'll play. So I had my original group, and we played on and off for 20 years. And then I had another group that we played for about 10 years. Mm-hmm. And then I had a third group that played for about 7 years. Then I went back to my original group, and it was still playing on and off. And now I have a brand new group that we've been playing for about 3 years on and off. But we don't play. We play other role playing games. I play Villains and Vigilantes.
Yeah.
I'll show you.
Let me see.
Yeah, like here. This is the rule book, but this is like a supplement. Villains, Vigilantes. This is actual some of Bill Willingham's first writing and art. So it's a superhero role playing game, and we play that. I base my comic book on our old adventures and stuff like that. Oh, look at my crazy guy! Look at that.
Right,
but I haven't played Dungeons and Dragons since second edition.
Yeah,
and we don't use miniatures. It's theater of the mind. But long story short, Dungeons and Dragons is supposed to be a call to adventure. And that's been the model for Dungeons and Dragons from day one. That's been the art, a call to adventure. Now you see like dwarves having barbecues. I don't know what it is anymore. And that's fine if that's the way you guys want to play. I almost feel like they should have made like Wizards of the Coast. This is call to adventure D&D. This is, we're still going to sell this. But if you want these lifestyle D&Ds, here's this, here's that. I don't blame any company for selling a product that makes money.
Yeah,
go ahead, sell the product. But they stopped the call to adventure D&D. They demonized the call to adventure D&D and actively chased away the fans.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was brought up was the leak sensitivity writing of the new handbook, of the new player handbook, and they were removing words like barbarian, fat, ugly, and stuff like that.
Right.
And
no evil races, and if you don't have evil orcs, are you playing D&D?
Yeah, true. But this was brought up by Professor Dungeonbringer,
Okay.
Professor Dungeon Master, who did the Deathbringer game, which is actually it looks like a good game. It's kind of like a killer, like a killer dungeon. You have to use your wits, and you can't escape the dungeon until you defeat Deathbringer. But it says here, Wizards of the Coast apologize to Luke Gygax. I cannot report this. I'm posting this directly to you on my YouTube video where you may comment to your heart's delight. But here we keep the comments short and simple, short and civil. Speaking negatively about me or Gary gets you banned instantly. No ranting against WotC here either. They apologize. Let's be adults in here in the room. Thank you. All right, so he pinned the room, and they're bringing in Luke Gygax and the two original creators of Dragonlance back to help with new campaigns coming up for D&D. So and basically they're just I feel like they're just desperate for money at this point.
Yeah. It's kind of funny when you chase away your audience. There's nobody buying your stuff. And the thing about D&D is my books are still good. My books aren't disintegrating or the words aren't fading. I can still play second edition D&D. I can still play third edition D&D. You can still find those books in bookstores. There's no need to buy new stuff. And so you chased away the old audience. The old audience already had their stuff. So and the new audience didn't come out. So good luck. I don't know. Are you familiar with, like the X-Wing game, Star Fantasy?
Yeah.
Flight?
Yeah, there was actually a competition not too long ago between.
Yeah, it was big. It was one of the, if not the biggest tactical miniatures game. It's a Star Wars based miniatures game. Comes with pre-painted miniatures. The rules are pretty easy. I've taught my wife how to play the game, and we've had a game like within 10 minutes of explaining the game you're playing. It's really, really simple and intuitive. Now they decided to make a second edition, and for whatever reason, I never got the second edition. It ticked off a lot of people, and support fell. So they decided, okay, it's the first edition, we sold everything we can. The only way to make more money is to abandon the rules and start over again. They ticked off everybody. Nobody came to buy the new stuff, and the old stuff, they still had it. these people like, we're not buying all the models again. We're not buying all the books again. We already have our models, so now, and boom, it's over with. That's what happened.
And this is the same thing that has been happening with Warhammer.
Absolutely.
The 10th edition came out, it pissed so many people off because this was actually, because with Warhammer you could play a game for like an entire day, but with 10th edition the rules were made so you can't, so it would be completely balanced with any army you want, and it was basically made for competitions and not casual play. So it actually steered a lot of people the wrong way.
That they changed some of the lore.
Yeah, a lot of the lore was changed, especially the female custodies, and when they brought up the thing about the female custodies, people were wondering, okay, so they're female custodies. You want to tell us how it happened? Oh no, they always existed.
Yep. Yeah. And then, so all these people were like, I don't play Warhammer because it looks too good and it's too expensive. And I know me, I'd have to get all in, and I do not need another tactical miniatures game. I got a bunch of them still in shrink wrap over here. So I'm just late, but I got my buddies. They all play Warhammer. There's a Warhammer tournament store around the block. And, I go and watch the events, but I can't play. But my roommates played, whatever. So I know the lore. I got a stack of Warhammer comics. I know the lore, and it's always been male Space Marines. Mm-hmm. And once the WotCs found out about this, they just pressured and pestered, and then they, you got the Space Angels, you got the Sisters of Battles or whatever. I forget what they're called.
Well,
no, you want Space Marine. What's that?
It's the Sisters of Battle.
Yeah, the Sisters of Battle. And no, we want. So now they made female, custodian. And then those people left. They didn't buy it.
Yeah, they didn't even. It was ratio. The custodians were basically ratioed, and
right.
And the custodians reveal trailer was basically ratioed, and they did not. And when they brought up individual model of a female custodian, they were asking, if you want, are you going to tell us how the female custodians came to be? They just put out a link to the article of saying how they've always been there. Like, you're driving your fans away.
Right. And like Henry Cavill, the actor, he says, like, when he gets into something, he likes all of the little intricacies, all the little niggling details, all the little nuggets of lore. And I gotta say, I'm the same way. Like, when I read Tolkien, every time I read Tolkien, I was like excited. Oh, you mean there's an appendices? And I read the appendices. Oh, there's a Sibyllary, and I read the Sibyllary. Oh, there's unfinished tales, and now there's letters. I want to know everything about this stuff. I love all that little details. And I argue people like a friendly argument. I don't like get nasty about it. But the Warhammer people are the same way. They want their detail. They love their lore, and they kowtow to people who don't play. They're not selling. You go to any game shop, they're peg warmers. Mm-hmm. And they moved on. Where are all these people, like, showing all of these people who screamed for female Space Marines? Where are they now? They're not on Twitter anymore, showing themselves painting them, showing themselves playing the games, talking about the stories, talking about these nail-biting victories. No. They just wanted to lift their leg on your hobby and move on.
All right, so this is Professor D&D. He's going to talk.
He looks like he's about to smuggle spices from Jabba the Hutt.
Well, here's a good news. He actually conquered cancer.
Oh, good.
He created Deathbringer, but he's going to talk about how D&D said sorry to Luke Gygax.
And respond to the absolute meanest comments I've ever received. Now that episode will air in 2 weeks. It's going to be the week after seismic news from Wizards of the Coast, and I only cover the biggest news with mainstream D&D, and this is as big as it gets. from the Luke Gygax press event at GaryCon last weekend. Luke Gygax said the new head of D&D, that would be Dan Ayub, apologized to him twice for how his family was treated by Wizards of the Coast. He became emotional when announcing he's going to be contributing to new official supplements and that the name Gygax, Greyhawk, and Dungeons & Dragons will once again be combined in official capacity, something he thought would never happen again. He said, quote, I love 5e for expanding the customer base, but this newfangled Dungeons & Dragons is too easy and wants adventures to be dangerous, not cakewalks, and the characters to feel not like they should be walking around in tights and a cape. This is from Polygon. Quote, we're the two that can fix this, said Dan Ayub, Dungeons & Dragons head of franchise, during a press conference at GaryCon 2026. Ayub was talking about the first meeting between himself and Luke Gygax, engineered by Joe Manganiello after Ayub took the reins of D&D 7 months ago. It's a big statement. Ayub was recognizing that the game, quote, lost its way at some point, and that he's trying to put it on the right path by involving popular figures like Joe Manganiello and Luke Gygax, the son of one of the game's creators, Gary Gygax. And props to Polygon for this article. It is really well written. I'll include a link to it below. And this is huge. I agree with them. It's absolutely huge, and I'll explain why in just a second. But first, have you pre-registered for the Deathbringer RPG Kickstarter yet? Deathbringer is a standalone game compatible with Shadowdark and all OSR modules. You can play a Deathbringer, an alchemically engineered super soldier, or a Doom Scribe, a spellcaster who gets their spells by stealing the skins of dead wizards, and a bunch of other classes. If you like Heavy Metal Magazine, Savage Sword of Conan, Pig-Faced Orcs, and everything 80s, you're going to love it. Pre-register at the link below and get yourself some limited edition Skull Dice. And you can pre-register for Deathbringer Miniatures, brought to you by Westphalia. This miniature set will feature 8 miniatures, including a new Deathbringer. Link to that below as well. A little history here. It's important to recognize this is not the first time Wizards of the Coast has apologized to a Gygax. After Gary was forced out of his own company, TSR, in 1985, he was persona non grata. They didn't mention him ever again. And because there was no internet at the time, none of us really knew what happened to him. It was just like he was there, and then he was gone. In the late 80s, early 90s, he created a new game, Dangerous Journeys. He had originally intended to call it Dangerous Dimensions, but TSR threatened to sue him, claiming a game with the initials D&D and associated with the name Gygax amounted to trademark infringement. That changed when Wizards of the Coast president Peter Atkinson bought TSR in the late 1990s and launched the 3rd edition. To win over fans, Atkinson paid both Gygax and Dave Arneson, D&D's co-creator, an undisclosed sum to make them whole. He wanted them to all play nice in the sandbox and celebrate D&D. And combined with the OGL, the Open Gaming License, allowing third-party creators to use D&D mechanics, led to the OSR, the old school renaissance, and a golden age of creation that acknowledged Arneson and Gygax as the creators of the game. But in recent years, Hasbro has distanced themselves from Gygax. Gary's name didn't even appear at the end of the Dungeons & Dragons movie. Instead, the credits read, based on Dungeons & Dragons by Hasbro. And
That is just messed up. Seeing your own creation honored on the silver screen, yet your name isn't actually shown on it.
Yep.
I mean, I don't blame Luke. I wouldn't blame Luke if he turned them down, but like he said earlier, new leadership has been put into Wizards of the Coast, and it looks like he's actually
that's a tough choice. First off, we don't know how much money, to be cynical, it's probably a nice cushy position with money thrown at you. You're going to turn that down. But to not be cynical, it's a good way to honor your father who created the game, and maybe send the benefit of the doubt. Like you said, maybe these new people really are genuine. So
yeah. On top of that, Gary and the new guy and the new head of WotC said that they want to bring adventure back to D&D. which actually does sound like they want to like steer D&D to the right, steer D&D right.
Right. Well, the Stranger Things crowd has moved on. Stranger Things is basically over. People seem to be disappointed with the ending of that. That wave is crashed, and the hardcore people are left. Just like it's going to happen with Marvel. It's going to happen with Star Wars. It's going to happen with all the other stuff that these wokies invaded. They're going to move on to the next glittering, sparkling thing.
Speaking about glittery, sparkling thing, we'll be talking about Star Trek next.
Wow.
Almost threw my popcorn at the screen. Point of the story is Atkinson was a super fan who understood what fans wanted. And Joe Manganiello is also a super fan who understands what fans want. And Dan Ayub, the new president of D&D, may be the guy to give it to him. So this is a huge step, and Ayub has made other great moves, having meetings with Forgotten Realms designer, and I'm pretty sure real-life wizard Ed Greenwood, as well as Ravenloft and Dragonlance creator Tracy Hickman and Dragonlance author Margaret Weiss back at the Wizards Seattle headquarters. And now we know why. They have written a new Dragonlance novel, War Wizard, arriving on August 4th, 2026. Hopefully we can get some preview copies at Gen Con. It is the first in a new Dragonlance trilogy and will focus on the first meeting between legends Huma, Dragonbane, and Magus. That's all they've said at this point, but I'm looking forward to it, and I'm already impressed with the cover. That is some great cover art there. And why are they doing it? I take Ayub at his word. He understands D&D has lost its way, and it has. I'm not getting into the details, but the company has done things that have alienated its older fan base, and that fan base has decided to vote with their wallet. And they have moved on to the many, many, many Dungeons & Dragons alternatives. Wizards also launched a poll last week asking fans what they think. And while the poll is closed, you could still see their responses on X, and it is brutal. I'm not going to read them here because I think they would be too incendiary. You could read them for yourself. But to summarize, much of the anger comes from Wizards of the Coast's rejection of D&D's founders and roots, slapping content warnings on legacy content, and the social media posts of certain designers speaking in a derogatory way toward older fans. Let's just leave it at that. And Dan Ayub's attendance at GaryCon, his mea culpa with the Gygax family, and his admission that D&D has lost its way is an acknowledgement that D&D has a problem with its core audience. Now, if you're a fan who's expecting an apology, this is about as close as you're going to get. I mean, they're never going to go line by line, this is what we did, and it's a big mistake, and it's all our fault. But I think this is a big step that Ayub has made towards setting things right again. Also, he's gotten the designers of the game to GaryCon and later this year to Gen Con. It's very important. I think GaryCon is the spiritual home of Dungeons and Dragons, like Geneva, Wisconsin. And Gen Con is just, well, it's just a big mega event con in America. And if you're going to have a role-playing game, you got to kind of go to those two places. And he's embracing those old designers and getting them to collaborate on new stuff. And this is all an attempt to bring the grognards home. Personally, I am very happy for Luke and his family, as well as Weiss, Hickman, Greenwood. I've met all these people, and they are great people. Luke has been on the show. I'll include a link to his interview right after this. Respect needs to be paid to the designers who made the game what it is today. Now, will the audience come back? That's the million-dollar question, and I can't answer it. But I can offer Dan Ayub some suggestions. First, continue what he's already done. Get those old designers designing new products and give them their stamp of approval. Number two, keep going to cons. Send your developers and designers to cons so they can meet the fans, have them run some games with some actual players so that they understand their audience. That's why I go to cons. I'm pitching a game. I want to meet the people that are potentially going to buy that game. I want to know what they think is cool. Three, I'm trying to phrase it the right way. You got to tell your designers to shut up. Like when they're on social media, they should only be talking about two things. The first is dungeons, and the second is dragons. So when they're on social media responding to a post or creating a post, they shouldn't be cheeky, preachy, or sarcastic, and never, never talk down to the fans. That is your audience. Those are your customers. As I said in my previous video, Dungeons & Dragons is popular because it is a generic heroic fantasy product. It goes right down the middle, attracting young people, old people, families. If Dungeons and Dragons were a beer, it'd be Budweiser. If it were an ice cream, it'd be vanilla. If it were a clothing item, it'd be a black t-shirt. And that genericism is what makes it popular. And when you have a large fan base, you got to realize you're going to have fans of all different types of backgrounds. They're going to have all different sorts of opinions on things like religion and politics. And somebody is always going to be offended for some reason. But the key is to try to make most of them happy and not to irritate the ones that are spending the most money. And fourth and finally, I would consider this disclaimer for your books. Every item, legacy and new content, should have somewhere in the front a statement that says, this is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to persons living or dead is purely coincidental. Think of how many problems over the last 3 or 4 years that would have solved. It worked for the movies. It can work for Dungeons and Dragons. So Ayub doesn't need to convince all the grognards to come back, but it would be good if they weren't actively campaigning against him, circling on social media with torches and pitchforks. That creates bad buzz, and it's not good for the brand. And that's what I think. What do you think? Share in the comments below. But please be respectful. Also below, you'll find links to Dungeon.
All right, so that was the great news. Ed Greenwood, Margaret Wise, Tracy Hickman, all coming back in the fold with Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah, good news. Course correction. But like he said, is it too late? Because I'm one of those stubborn people. Like, once you insult me, I always use the metaphor. You break up with a girl, I ain't calling her back. We broke up. I moved on. I got a new girl. Yeah. It's I'm not collecting Marvel comics anymore. I don't watch Star Wars. Star Wars, nothing. I don't watch anything Star Trek after Enterprise. I'm done. I'm looking for new stuff, but I'm weary. I don't want to watch 13 hours of a TV show and then I get preached in the 14th episode. So I'm waiting for other people to tell me, oh, this was good, John. You'll like it. DC as well. Yeah, I'm done. I quit Marvel and DC in 2015. But as you can see, I'm still finding comics to read. There's my to read pile,
Oh, yeah.
And I'm just more discerning, but I ain't going back.
Oh, yeah. But one of the things that he brought up was going to conventions and let the old fans know that Dungeons and Dragons is back. We're open to suggestions. We'll take the fan advice, and not just and actual fans, not theater kids, but actual fans. Let them know what they want to see.
Yeah, how much money has all of these Stranger Things people bought? How much money has they spent? Have they spent on Star Wars, on Dungeons Dragon? They don't. They talk about it. They'll buy a Funko Pop, but I all of these new fans, like I said, the people who wanted Warhammer to change, I don't see them. I'm active in a lot of fan groups. You and I, we both do YouTube. I make my own comic books. I'm active in a lot of fan groups. I don't see these people posting their painted miniatures and talking about their campaigns. Anybody I see talk about Dungeons & Dragons is an old beard guy like me. Yeah, they moved on. They're looking for the next thing to lift their leg on.
Yeah, so I've always want. I think it's it may be a good direction, but is it too late? Like he said, they're trying to bring back the old grognards, which is old slang for barbarians.
Well, is it barbarians or is it just old school hardcore D&D players? That's how I always took it as I called myself.
Yeah, I think I remember one of the characters in old school D&D was a barbarian named Grognark.
Oh, is that where it came from? I'm looking it up now, but you're probably right. I never looked it up.
But it's always one of the it's just I don't know if it's too late or not, but I hope it's not too late, because I know a lot of people who grew up with who actually grew up during the time of 5th edition, but they played 3rd edition. Like my buddy Sylph, you met him. He played 3rd edition, and he loves Dungeons and Dragons, and he always wants to bring in fans to Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
And he's a Gen Z, and he's a Gen Zer.
The word grognard comes from the French. It literally means grumbler or grouch. It originally referred to the veteran soldiers of Napoleon Bonaparte's Imperial Guard during the Napoleonic Wars. The term entered the gaming hobby in the 70s through wargaming circles. Has been used playing. Yeah, so yeah, it's the older, grouchy old men. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Yeah. All
right, so, but I mean, it looks great. It looks good. I mean, the Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I think a lot of stuff. I think Marvel and DC are turning the corner. I think a lot of people are realizing. I don't know how politically you want me to get on your channel, so tell me to stop. But I think when this USAID thing got, Doge came, and we saw that they were literally giving billions of dollars away for left-wing nonsense. And what a coincidence. That money stopped 2 years ago, and now we're seeing all of the stuff end. Like, was it artificially propped up? Were these people, I don't even see the Twitter people anymore talking about how, we need more, Superman needs to be a black lesbian female, Eskimo with, the last holdout I see, and even that's going away, is wheelchairs in D&D, which is a really weird thing in a world where death isn't even permanent, but being crippled is. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, you could actually. I don't know if you've seen the Dream Warrior, Nightmare on Elm Street, the Dream Warriors, but there was a guy who was addicted to D&D, and he was crippled, and he was wheelchair bound, and he says in his dream he was a wizard. He was a wizard. He could walk.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Peter Dinklage in that movie, Living in Oblivion. He goes, I'm a dwarf, and in my dreams, there are no other dwarves. Because everybody, to be weird, I'm dreaming about a dwarf. I don't dream about dwarves.
I mean, one of my. It's like what a lot of my friend Sylph always says this. Being in D&D, it was always something that being someone you weren't in real life.
I wanted to be a wizard spellcaster or this flipping cool, super 8-foot tall, half giant barbarian smashing down the walls, or if the human longsword paladin, with the holy mission, riding this glorious steed into combat. I want to be a fat construction worker, whose knees hurt. I don't want to do that. I do that all the time.
Yeah, that's a good. All right, so let's move on to our next topic. I don't know if but it ties in with D&D, and I don't know if you heard of the comic book Dork that came out.
I've been seeing all about it. I didn't get it, but it's like a surprise hit. Good for him.
Yeah, it was actually done by a cartoonist. Here we go. And this was actually a surprise hit. It got a second printing, and it outsold Absolute Batman.
Yeah, good. I like to see that. I want reasons for people to go into the comic book stores.
So congratulations to Brett Bean with his art and with his story, and this fabulous art by Belayo. I mean, this is actually a really looks like a really fun comic book that reminds me of Bone.
Yeah. Now I haven't read. I don't know anything about it. So what is it like? It's like a humorous version of D&D.
Yeah, it's actually a guy. It's actually or someone who's half dwarf, half orc. So that's why it's called Dork.
Okay.
So and he has a living shield, and so he's trying to go on an adventure.
Okay.
So this is like it's a humorous take on the hero's journey.
Okay.
So this actually outsold Absolute Batman. But like one of the things that was brought up, like, on Thinking Critical a couple weeks ago, was that this was a low print comic, and it became a surprise hit along with two other comic books, Nectar and White Sky.
Yeah, look at that. It says 25,000 for the second printing. I mean, I think Absolute Batman is selling hundreds of thousands, isn't it?
Yeah, but the first issue it sold out, and then they asked for a second printing, and then that sold out, and then they asked for a third printing, and
Good.
so it eventually outsold Absolute Batman in that month.
Good.
But a lot of these low print comics have become the new target for scalpers. Like, look at this. Second printing, $33.78 with a $20 shipping price.
Well, if people pay for it,
$100 for the first print variant. $40 for the C cover, first print. And it's like these are just. I mean, I'm glad that this comic is being. Oh, I like this cover though. I'm glad that this comic is getting a bunch of notoriety, but I feel like this is just diluting the industry right now. And this is the first time it happened. I remember, like, when big comic events happen, the scalpers would go to the comic book store. They would buy up all the product, and then they would go and resell them for more.
Right. I remember when I worked in the comic store, the Nom #1 came out, and I was bagging and boarding. I literally had a stack of about 200 of them. It was the third print, but this guy comes in and he goes, "What's that?" And he has his son, and I go, "It's the Nom #1." And he's like, "How much?" And I go, "Cover price." And they both like. And they bought the whole stack, 200 issues,
Yeah.
And the owner was just like, "Did you tell him it was third print?" And I said, "No, should I have?" He goes, no, screw them. They think that they're gonna go sell it now, that we were idiots. And then he just got on the phone and put it in another order, and next, a couple of days later we had another stack of Nom #1. I always wondered what that guy did when he tried to resell those. But yeah, scalpers.
Yeah. I mean, this is actually doing a lot of bad to the industry. Like, if I put in like, let me see if I get White Sky. Let me see what'll pop up if I put in White Sky #1, because like what I heard from Wes and what my comic book guy, hope he's doing great. His wife is battling cancer. What he confirmed was that first print was that they look for first print. They look for first prints of low print comic books, and they'll resell them for ridiculous prices. So yeah, here we go. White Sky #1. Triple signed. Here's another one. So he brought up 3 examples with Dork, Nectar, and White Sky. And
I never heard of Nectar.
Yeah, these were surprise indie hits: White Sky, Dork, and Nectar. These were actually came out as surprise indie hits that got good reviews. So like Nectar, he like Wes from Thinking Critical, he brought up White Sky, Dork, and Nectar. Those were the three main comics that were low print, but then they ended up going up on eBay for hundreds of dollars when they first came out. And when I told that to my comic book guy, he's like, you think that they would have chosen better books because White Sky and Nectar were like meh, but Dork was pretty good, but I don't know if it's gonna keep up that momentum.
They never do. All of the hot books, they die out sooner rather than later. But yeah, I remember when I worked at Toys R Us, during the next generation action figures came out, guys would come in and buy every one of them, and then sell them at either their stores, eBay, or whatever. And it was just like infuriating. But what are you gonna do? You can't just tell these. I worked there. I was just stocking shelves. I couldn't tell them you can't take every one of them.
Yeah. I mean, I did. I worked at Toys R Us too, and
I love that stuff.
Yeah, me too. There were like great senior citizens that would come in every day when we opened. They would come in looking for the rare Hot Wheels, seeing if any of them were out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, like they knew that we got action figures every Thursday, and these people would come in like first thing, and like I would have boxes, and they were like almost physically pull the boxes out of my head, because at the time they wanted to get the Deadpool action figure that was like going for like $200 on the resale market. Part of me,
yeah,
I wish I should have bought all the Deadpools. They shouldn't even have made it to the shelves. I should have bought them and sold them, but I didn't think like that as a kid.
Yeah, and on top of that, have you seen what's been happening with Pokemon craze?
Oh yeah, I got guys that I work with who don't even know the rules to Pokemon, don't even know it's a game, and they and their sons, they go to stores and they buy cases and sell them. They just know it's a moneymaker. They are pure speculators, and it drives me nuts. And they're bragging to me, and I'm just like biting my tongue. I'm like, guys like you ruin the hobbies.
Yeah, and on top of that, it got so bad that a person in New York was actually shot because of it. And and also like in Texas, game store was actually broken into, and the only thing they stole was the Pokemon.
Yeah,
was the Pokemon stuff. And I was like, you have the Warhammer section right there. You could have gotten a few hundred grand worth of product right there, guaranteed. Instead, you took blind boxes of Pokemon.
Yep, I can see it.
All right, so one of the things I know you haven't touched. Yeah, Power. It's brutal out there, especially for collectors. But I know you haven't talked about Star Trek. You haven't watched Star Trek ever since Enterprise. But do you know about the Kurtzman Trek?
What, the movies?
No, the latest Star Treks.
I mean, I know about them. I haven't watched them. Not interesting.
Well, the last Star Trek was Starfleet Academy.
Yeah, I heard all about it. That Red Letter Media guy said it had 40,000. All the episodes altogether had less than 40,000 views.
Yeah. And on top of that, it cost at least $10 million an episode.
Yeah. Ignoring your fan base should be expensive.
Yeah. And just a couple of weeks ago, it was announced that after the season finale, it announced that it was going to be canceled after its second season. On top of that, they announced that they were starting to tear down the set of Starfleet Academy and Strange New Worlds, which I did not think I actually wanted Strange New Worlds, because I thought it was classic Star Trek. episodic format.
Yeah, I didn't watch that either.
Yeah, but Kurtzman is in hot water right now.
Good.
Hang on, Paramount might be canceling his Star Trek, right? Because right now looks like they're going to go with a great reset and a great reset.
You know,
Following
if I do my job and the customer doesn't like it, I get fired. I don't know what's going on in Hollywood where they could do this for years.
Well, this is the thing that they would with Alex Kurtzman and Secret Hideout. They actually had, before Skydance bought off Paramount, he actually had a guaranteed contract, and from 2018 to 2006. So, and he would get, and this was a guaranteed contract. So if they ended his contract early, they would have to pay out of pocket to buy it out. So they thought it would be better. It would be more easier for them to wait out the contract. But I don't know if it is, because they actually got it's just been one disaster after another.
Yeah.
Like when Paramount Plus first launched his smart,
it falls apart after that. You know, the ESG stuff goes away. So, like, was this was this propped up by that USAID money? Also, that's the conspiracy theory in me.
Yeah.
What a coincidence that all of this stuff is falling apart now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like with the Star Trek Discovery, the first 2 seasons of Star Trek Picard, and now Star Trek Starfleet Academy. This was just like a train wreck just waiting to happen.
Yeah. Wouldn't know. Never watched an episode of it.
Yeah, but I mean, everything. This is like,
you know what I knew, because I watched the Star Trek Discovery, the pilot episode was in 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the first episode just because I was curious, and then I didn't know where to find it. I didn't know what channel it was on, and I just lost track of it. It was on for like 4 or 5 weeks before I was like, oh, okay, this is how I watched the second half. I forget how I stumbled, but by that time they had already announced that they were bringing in Spock.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm done. To me, bringing in Spock it showed me that they didn't have enough faith in their own show. You know what I mean? That's like in DC Comics, the second issue of any comic, they bring in Superman because they know it's not going to sell. We got to get the Superman. It's just like, no. Leonard Nimoy is the only one who plays Spock. Spock is gone. You know, if you need Spock, you know, Next Generation. Well, they brought in McCoy, but Next Generation, it ended up being its own thing. But like, you don't need these classic characters if your show can stand on its own merits. So I was like, I'm done. Yeah. I'm not even going to watch it. And I never saw another second. So I saw the first half of the pilot episode, and that was it. And this Academy was ridiculous. Everybody was fat.
Yes.
Did one girl eat her comm badge? You know.
Yes.
Yeah. What the hell? How do these people survive in space?
And it's like, what the hell? I mean, what are the things that? Well, some of the animation projects like Star Trek Prodigy and Star Trek Lower Deck, those were not under Kurtzman's, so they did pretty well because they felt like authentic Star Trek. Like Star Trek Prodigy felt like a kid. This one right here with like a hologram of Captain Janeway or from the Discovery, or what's it, Voyager. in there, but she's there as a mentor to these kids who are basically all prodigies in their own right. So it was like a cute space kids adventure, but they canceled it after one season.
I never even heard of it.
Yeah, and Star Trek Lower Decks actually got the Rick and Morty got a lot of fans laughing because it was like a comedy set in the Star Trek universe, but like it was like the ones that Alex Kurtzman did not have full control over actually did better. Like Picard season 3 was the only one that did good. The first 2 seasons, it was like, oh, we need to make sure we need to humiliate Captain Picard.
Yeah.
It was just so. Kurtzman's contract is up later this year, and it's up to Paramount right now if they want to renew his contract. But rumor has it that they're going to do a good reset with the guys. Let me see, what does it say?
Let Star Trek die. Let Star
up.
Wars die. Let them all die. Come up with something new. Star Wars. I always thought Star Wars.
I mean, one of the things is that
I always thought Star Wars was a limited concept. Once the war is over,
one of the things that
Star Wars was supposed to be World War II.
You did have Star Wars Legend, but then Disney went and destroyed that one, made it all redundant. So there's a rumor right now going on that the guys who did Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves are going to went to Paramount with a pitch saying how they will do the producers Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis. They went there for a pitch to Paramount that they could do a Star Trek movie for half the price and feel as authentic have it be authentic Star Trek.
Okay.
Here we go. Yeah, Lower Deck was animated show making fun of the old tropes of Star Trek. Never watched it aside from when it promoted through the commercials. So here we go. So I don't know if you'll give it a chance, but I mean the guys did do a good job with Dungeons and Dragons, because I saw Honor Among Thieves and it was like a D&D campaign.
Yeah,
all the characters were there.
I liked it. I would like to see more.
These guys. All right, so these guys, Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis, did a pitch for a new movie for Star Trek. All right, so Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly, the duo behind Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, and the screenplay for Spider-Man Homecoming, are enlisting in Starfleet. They've been hired to write and produce and direct a new Star Trek film that will see revitalize the franchise after its languished for nearly a decade without a big screen adventure. However, the varieties Variety reported that the new film will not be a continuation of the J.J. Abrams-led reboot of the series, and it won't feature Chris Pines or any of the other actors from the movies. In fact, while the plot details are being kept under wraps, the project is not connected to any of the previous or current television movies prior to the movie development projects. So you're out of luck to see Jean-Luc Picard or Catherine Janeway, since Star Trek Beyond opened. All right. Okay. In 2024, all right. Getting new Star Trek out of dry dock has been a priority for Paramount since David Ellison of Skydance took control of the company in August, because the series is one of the most enduring properties in the studio library. Daily Jonathan Goldstein are known to Ellison's company for having recently written and directed and produced a Skydance film Mayday, starring Ryan Reynolds and Catherine Bill, which they produce through their Golden Day banner. It will premiere on Apple TV. All right. Daly and Goldman previously helmed New Line's comedy Game Night and wrote and directed Studio's Vacation reboot. The duo's additions to credit include Horrible Bosses, Cloudy with Chance Meatballs. Goldstein and Daly are represented by blah, blah, blah. All right. So the thing is that these guys are basically pitched that they will bring Star Trek back, authentic Star Trek, but with only half the price. I don't know if you have faith in that.
Nope. I've been burnt too many times. Anything new, I'm just going to, I'll give it a season or two, let you guys watch it. I got other stuff. I'm happy reading my old comics. I've started to read Tarzan for the first time. There's a lot of good old stuff that I know is good, but I never had time to deal with before. I'm not going to watch new Star Trek after 15 years of crap Star Trek. They lost me. And there's a lot of guys who feel the same way. New Dungeons Dragons, my second edition books were fine.
Yeah.
They did a new version of Villains and Vigilantes. I bought this, and I've been using the rule book since 1983 rather. And I open up this book, I'm reading it, and there's a whole section on gender identity. You could roll out to see whether or not you're man or woman or non-binary, and if you're non-binary, then you could roll under your gender expression is the same as gender identity. Different gender identity. Androgynous involves traits associating with multiple genders. Gender neutral, mostly, and then you could roll for your biological sex, your cisgender, transgender, or intersex, and then you roll for your sexual attraction. Are you straight? Are you gay, lesbian? Are you bisexual? Or are you asexual? Now, what does that have to do with pretending to be Spider-Man?
I don't know.
So why do I want it? I don't want anything new. I'm sorry, guys. I don't want anything new. I'm happy with my old stuff.
Yeah.
I'm happy with like I said, I still have 20 long boxes of comics I haven't read. I'm done. You guys lost me. When somebody says they're doing a new Star Trek show, I could not be less interested. Oh, you got new D&D? Well, I got a stack of second edition D&D books over here that are still good. My imagination is still fine. I could tinker with it, do whatever I want. There's old comics, there's old movies. These guys shot themselves in the foot, and I don't think they're ever going to recover. I feel bad for young kids because they don't have access to second edition stuff. They don't know it exists. So they're not going to play D&D. They're not going they watch Star Trek now, and it's a bunch of fat women eating their comm badges. They don't want to watch that show.
Or captain treating the captain's chair like she's lounging in a bookstore in Seattle.
Right. I'm surprised she didn't start cutting her toenails. So they don't care. They think it's a joke. I don't know what kids today are going to be interested in. Like a 12-year-old right now What is their Star Wars? What is their Star Trek? What is their D&D? What is their X-Men? What is their Fantastic Four?
Here, Power got the answer.
Absolutely. Yep, you're right. You're right. Absolutely right. They're reading manga. And the funny thing is, I should have known that because I got about 50 nieces and nephews. They all read manga. They all watch anime. None of them watch Star Trek. None of them care about Star Wars. They don't play Dungeons and Dragons. They don't do any of the stuff that I'm interested in. Like the fact that I make comic books, they think is kooky and weird. But they all watch manga. They can talk about One Piece and Pieces of Eight and whatever the hell manga stuff, Attack on Titan, that I don't know anything about.
Yeah, I've been watching anime and manga and reading manga since I was like in high school. But
I don't blame them. It's good because it's good. That's why they're reading it. They moved on to something that's good. Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, and this is there's a video of a woman who talked about the canceling of this, and she says that she actually talked to some Gen Zers about this, and one of the first thing about it was like, is that the one with lightsabers?
Yeah. When I was a kid, Star Wars came out when I was in 3rd grade. I was like the target audience for Star Wars. So it came out in May. That summer, and then the summer afterwards, so like 3rd and 4th grade, I was obsessed with Star Wars. We played Star Wars. We got all the toys. I saw Star Wars in the movie theaters, the original theatrical release, 17 times. I kept track. That's how I loved Star Wars. I can't believe that. Like, oh, they're making a Star Wars show? Not interested. The last Star Wars thing I watched was the second of the sequels. It was so bad, I never went for the third of the sequels, and I've never watched Mandalorians or Groku's, or I don't know. I'm done. I don't care. They ruined something. They took George Lucas's notes, threw it away. That wasn't the story that was supposed to be told. They never put Luke, Han, and Leia and the scene together. They embarrassed Han Solo. They reduced Chewbacca. Chewbacca's just a slave.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Chewbacca's just a slave. Han Solo dies. He gets gifted to Rey. Like, Chewbacca should have been like, oh, Han's dead. I'm going to go. I'll drop you guys off on your planet, but I got the Millennium Falcon now. I'm going to go take care of my own business. No. Oh, Rey is in charge, and now Chewbacca's just an accessory to,
Yeah.
It's like he's just a lightsaber. He's just an object that was gifted to Rey. And who the hell is Rey?
Kathleen Kennedy's power fantasy.
Right. It's a mockery of everything. I'm not interested. So I was just like, I'm not going to watch the last movie. I have no idea what happened. All I know is somehow Palpatine returned. Everybody makes fun of that. Don't care.
Yeah.
Don't care. My life is better for not seeing that movie, or the Mandalorians, or the Andalorians, and whatever these shows are. Not interested. Ed, I got so much good stuff to occupy my time with. I read Dick Tracy for the first time.
Oh, have you read the new Dick Tracy comics that came out?
I didn't even know there was new Dick Tracy.
Yeah, I mean they're relaunching like these old comics, the Phantom,
right?
The Phantom, Flash Gordon, the Rocketeer, the Shadow, and Dick Tracy.
People have been telling me Space Ghost is good.
Space Ghost, yeah. Sully told me that he loves the Flash Gordon comics.
Yeah, I've always liked those old pulp era comics, newspaper characters. Man, if they, I'll check them out. I'll go check them out.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let's go with the last one. I mean, I don't know if you heard, but Disney went through a round of layoffs, and a lot of it were artists from Marvel Studios, and were artists from either Disney or Marvel or even Star Wars, but also there were like 8% came from the comic book side of Marvel, So, and a lot of these names, some of these names that they brought up didn't even make sense. That they laid off editors who sold 3K Daredevil copy. An editor that sold three, also SVP David Gabriel. Now David Gabriel, he actually had a good idea. He was the guy who brought in blind bags, and they laid him off. I mean, the blind bags, it may be a gimmick, but it was actually a gimmick that actually paid off. So, like, David Gabriel, is said to be out after 23 years. He's the senior VP of publishing. So, after 23 years at Marvel, Devin Lewis, who did Daredevil #1, he's gone. Let's see. And Lewis, who did Daredevil, Moon Knight, Punisher, Spirit of Violence in 1776, and more Marvel. And okay, so Timothy Chang, Executive Director of Communications, Laura Bensi, Senior Editor for Marvel Kids, Marvel Zombies, and Strange Tales, and David Shen, Editor of X-Men Outback, X-Men 79, X-Men 97, and in Age of Revelations. These guys were actually cut. And I don't want anybody to lose their jobs, but I mean, they
kept Tom Brevoort?
They kept Tom Brevoort, they kept Nick Lowe, and they kept C.B. Cebulski. And Jordan White.
Yeah, Jordan White, C.B. Cebulski, and Brevoort were the ones that needed to go.
And Nick Lowe. I mean, his self in they already killed off his self in. Oh, I don't know if you don't read New Spider-Man, so Nick Lowe's self-insert Paul was finally killed.
Yeah,
earlier this month.
Even though I don't read the comics, the screams of Paul is dead made it to my house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is also the Sony's going to lay off a bunch after there were data breaches in Crunchyroll. Thanks, Power. So yeah, like the check has come calling, or the tax man has come calling, or the collector, the loan shark, whatever you want to call it, he's come calling. And if you haven't made money, you're gone.
Right.
But I mean, they got the wrong with this. I see this with the wrong people are getting cut. Laura Benson, she actually does a good job. She's trying to do a good job with the Marvel Kids line. David Shane, he did some of the best X-Men books, and Timothy Chang, he's doing some what I don't know. He should stay there. Also, like David Lewis and David Gabriel, they shouldn't have been gone. They shouldn't have been taken off. I mean, David Gabriel with the blind bags, David Gabriel actually helped Marvels get a lot of money. So, yeah, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, especially now that people are going to look. So, like, there was even this one artist who lost his job, and he says it was more devastating being in the office with art you designed of Loki and them telling you lost your job.
Yeah. I mean, it always happened, though. It happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s. You know, working in comic books is basically freelance. You know, there's no guarantees. It's a you know, you're hot one day, you're out the next.
Yeah.
Well, when you work, you know, when you're working in comics, and you're an artist or a writer, save your money. You know, that's all I got to say. But I got to get going. My wife and I gotta have dinner.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, John.
All
right. Thanks a lot. Thanks everybody for tuning in. So now, as always, keep playing. I will say, keep playing, and God bless.